Hi, automotive enthusiasts. Welcome to Boost Bureau, where today we dive into one of the most iconic machines ever to roll out of Maranello, a car that carried the final personal stamp of Enzo Ferrari himself, the Ferrari F40. This isn't just a story about horsepower or styling. It's about legacy, vision, and the uncompromising philosophy of a man who reshaped the idea of a supercar. By the late 1980s, the automotive world was shifting quickly. Technology was advancing, rivals were gaining ground, and the line between road and race machines was blurring. In that storm, the F40 emerged like a thunderclap, shocking enthusiasts and critics alike. What makes it so enduring? Was it really the last great analog Ferrari, or has nostalgia inflated its status? Today, we'll uncover those answers by looking at how the F40 came to be, what it meant in its own time, and why it still commands awe decades later. We'll start with the circumstances that led to its birth. Ferrari at a crossroads, competition, pressing from every side, and Enzo Ferrari facing the twilight of his career. We'll then move into the heart of the car itself, how it was engineered with ruthless simplicity, why it terrified and thrilled drivers, and how it became both controversial and legendary in equal measure. Finally, we'll explore the legacy the F40 left behind, not just within Ferrari's lineup, but in the broader culture of performance cars, collector markets, and the mythology of speed itself. Stick with me, because over the course of this deep dive, you'll hear the fascinating micro-stories of design breakthroughs, the cultural context that framed its launch, and the reflections that reveal what really made the F40 matter. Whether you've seen one in person, only in photographs, or perhaps dream of hearing its turbos spool one day, by the end of this journey, you'll understand why the Ferrari F40 isn't just a supercar. It's a statement of philosophy frozen in carbon, steel, and fire. So let's step back to the mid-1980s and watch the road that led to Enzo Ferrari's ultimate farewell take shape. A road paved with ambition, rivalry, and the unrelenting pursuit of speed. The mid-1980s were a pivotal moment for Ferrari, and the seeds of the F40 were sown in an atmosphere of both triumph and anxiety. The company had proven its dominance in Formula One, but on the road car side, competitors like Porsche with the 959 and Lamborghini with the Countach were pushing boundaries in ways that put Ferrari under pressure. Enzo Ferrari was well into his 80s, and there was a growing sense that the company needed a definitive statement, something to remind the world who still set the bar in performance. Out of that urgency came the decision to build a car that was not only faster than anything else, but truer to Ferrari's raw racing spirit than any road-going machine in recent memory. Micro-story. The secret beginning. The project that would become the F40 started not as a showpiece, but as a race program. Ferrari engineers had been developing the 288 GTO Evoluzione, a heavily modified version of the 288 GTO designed for Group B racing. When that racing category collapsed, Ferrari was left with 5 radical prototypes and no championship to enter. Rather than waste the effort, Enzo saw an opportunity. Use the lessons from those prototypes to craft a road car unlike any other. This pivot turned canceled racing dreams into the blueprint for the most famous Ferrari of the decade. Context Digest. The competition's challenge, Porsche's 959, had stunned the world with twin-turbo technology, electronic all-wheel drive, and futuristic materials. Lamborghini's Countach, though older, remained the bedroom wall poster for speed. Ferrari couldn't ignore that enthusiasts were looking to rivals for cutting-edge performance. The F40 would be Maranello's answer, not by matching them in luxury or gadgetry, but by surpassing them in rawness, reflection bridge. Where others pursued sophistication, Ferrari chose purity, micro-story, the bare-bones design. When the prototypes were handed to Pininfarina's designers, they had one mandate: keep it functional. The F40's body was shaped with racing aerodynamics in mind, its panels made from carbon fiber, Kevlar, and aluminum to save weight. Inside, creature comforts were stripped away. No carpet, no soundproofing, no radio. Every ounce saved was an ounce toward performance. This extreme minimalism shocked the public when unveiled, because it seemed less like a car for the road, and more like a competition machine disguised as one. Context Digest. Enzo's philosophy. In his late years, Enzo Ferrari grew distrustful of the increasing focus on electronic driver aids and luxury and performance cars. He wanted a machine that forced the driver to rise to the challenge, not one that softened the edges of speed. The F40 embodied that desire. It was deliberately intimidating, demanding respect from anyone behind the wheel, just as a racing car would. Micro story. A launch with impact. When the F40 debuted in 1987, the automotive press was stunned. Ferrari claimed it was the first production car capable of surpassing 200 miles per hour, a figure that carried immense weight in the speed wars of the era. Its styling, with the massive rear wing and aggressive lines, left no doubt about its intent. Even those who criticized its Spartan interior couldn't ignore that Ferrari had delivered a bold statement. This was the fastest, most uncompromising road car yet. Reflection bridge. The world now had a new benchmark, but benchmarks invite. Questions of limits. Context digest. The cultural spark. The F40 arrived at a moment when car culture was hungry for heroes. The oil crisis was fading from memory, the economy was booming, and the appetite for outrageous performance was high. The F40 became more than a car. It became a symbol of the decade's excess and ambition, appearing on posters, in magazines, and in whispered conversations among enthusiasts. It wasn't just about what it could do, it was about what it represented. A machine that distilled desire into carbon and fire. Microstory. The driving experience. Those who got behind the wheel found it terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The twin turbocharged V8 delivered brutal acceleration, but with significant turbo lag that made power arrive in a violent rush. There were no electronic aids to catch a mistake. Oversteer was real, and so were the consequences. Yet for those who mastered it, the reward was unmatched connection, a visceral link between human and machine that modern cars often filter out. Context digest. Early criticism. Some journalists at the time criticized the F40 as too crude, compared to the advanced Porsche 959. Where the Porsche offered refinement and adaptability, the Ferrari was loud, hot, and unforgiving. But that was precisely the point. Ferrari wasn't building a comfortable tourer, it was building a statement of intent. That tension between comfort and purity would define the debates surrounding the car for decades to come. Micro story, collector frenzy. Despite a planned run of 400 units, demand for the F40 exploded almost instantly. Wealthy enthusiasts lined up, and prices skyrocketed, creating a speculative bubble around the car. It became not just an object of desire for drivers, but also a hot commodity for investors. This frenzy raised questions. Was the F40 destined to be remembered as a driver's car or as a collectible trophy? The answers to that question, and the car's true meaning in Ferrari's story, only became clearer as time went on, leading us to explore not just its impact at launch, but the deeper mechanics of how it shaped Ferrari's trajectory in the years that followed. As the dust settled from the initial shock of the F40's unveiling, the conversation shifted from speed records and headlines to what the car truly represented. Ferrari had made a conscious choice to build a machine that stripped away comforts and demanded mastery, and that decision carried both acclaim and criticism. The car was a paradox, at once the pinnacle of Ferrari engineering and a throwback to a wilder, less polished era. To understand why it mattered so much, we need to look closer at the forces that shaped it and the debates it sparked. Micro story. The turbo gamble. Ferrari's use of turbocharging in the F40 wasn't just about raw power, it was a deliberate experiment in transferring Formula One technology to the road. The twin turbocharged 2.9-liter V8 could produce around 471 horsepower, but it wasn't smooth or forgiving. The boost came suddenly, slingshotting the car forward and challenging drivers to manage the chaos. For Ferrari, this was proof that racing lessons belonged in street cars, even if it meant terrifying the average driver. Context digest. Engineering in plain language. Unlike Porsche, which tamed turbocharging with electronics, Ferrari leaned into its unpredictability. The lack of driver aids made the F40 demanding, but also honest. Every input mattered. Every mistake was felt. It was a car that refused to coddle its owner. This decision made it divisive, but also unforgettable. Reflection bridge. The F40 forced the question, should a supercar be accessible, or should it demand courage? Micro story. The raw numbers. On paper, the F40 was blistering. 0 to 60 miles per hour in just over 4 seconds, and a top speed that cracked the 200 mark. But the statistics only told part of the story. The real legend was built in the seat of the pants experience, how drivers described their hands shaking after a run, or their knees weak after managing a turbo surge through a corner. The F40 wasn't just fast, it was visceral. Context, digest. The press wars. Automotive journalists became divided camps. Some hailed the F40 as the purest Ferrari ever built, a return to form for a company that had been drifting toward comfort. Others dismissed it as crude compared to the sophisticated 959. These dueling narratives fueled the F40's mystique, making it less about numbers and more about what kind of driver you wanted to be. Was it a badge of bravery or a relic of stubbornness? Microstory, Enzo's shadow. Just a year after the F40's debut, Enzo Ferrari passed away in 1988. His death cast the car in a new light. Suddenly, the F40 wasn't just another model. It became his final signature, the last Ferrari, built under his watch. Owners, collectors, and fans began to see it as a piece of history, not merely a machine. The car gained an aura, and its symbolic value soared. Reflection bridge. What began as a bold engineering choice transformed into a cultural icon through timing and circumstance. Context, digest. The market frenzy grows. With Enzo's passing, demand for the F40 went from intense to feverish. More than 2,300 units were eventually built, far beyond the original 400 planned, yet prices still soared. The car became a fixture of auctions and private collections, its scarcity and story making it a magnet for investment. It was both a driver's car and a financial asset, a dual identity that only deepened its legend. Micro story. On the track. Though not designed as a race car, the F40 found its way into competition. Privateers entered modified versions in endurance events, where the car's brutal speed and lightweight gave it flashes of success. These appearances reinforced its link to Ferrari's racing DNA, even if it was never a factory-backed campaign. For enthusiasts, seeing an F40 with numbers on the doors was proof of its authenticity. Context, digest. Cultural penetration. The F40 didn't just live in garages and racetracks. It appeared in video games, posters, and films, becoming a pop culture touchstone. To a generation of kids, the silhouette of its wing and the roar of its turbos defined what a supercar should look and feel like. Few cars achieved that level of symbolic presence, and fewer still maintained it for decades. Microstory. The myth of difficulty. Over time, stories about the F40's difficulty to drive took on a life of their own. It became the car that separated the daring from the timid, a litmus test of driver skill. While not impossible to handle, it demanded respect in ways that modern cars with electronic safety nets do not. This myth turned into part of its appeal, the idea that you had to earn the right to drive it well. Reflection bridge. By the end of the 1980s, the F40 was no longer just a car, it was a measuring stick for what it meant to be a Ferrari. Yet, the 1990s brought new challenges and a changing landscape. To fully understand the F40's impact, we have to look at how its raw character influenced the next wave of supercars, and how its legacy was interpreted in the years after Enzo Ferrari's passing. The 1990s ushered in a new era of performance cars, but the shadow of the Ferrari F40 loomed large over everything that followed. Ferrari itself moved toward more refined machines, introducing the F50 and later the Enzo, both infused with higher technology and greater comfort. Yet no matter how advanced these successors were, enthusiasts and journalists kept looking back to the F40 as the benchmark of purity. Its reputation only grew stronger with time, as nostalgia painted its rawness in even bolder colors. Microstory, The F50 comparison. When Ferrari launched the F50 in 1995, it was billed as the natural successor to the F40, complete with Ferrari, a Formula One-derived V12 engine, and more sophisticated chassis. But the F50 added more luxury touches and smoothed out many of the rough edges. While technically superior in many ways, it struggled to capture the same visceral magic. Critics often judged it against the F40, finding that the newer car, though faster in certain respects, lacked the elemental bite of its predecessor. Context digest. The rise of electronics. The 1990s and 2000s saw performance cars adopt electronic driver aids, advanced aerodynamics, and more creature comforts. Anti-lock braking systems, traction control, and even early stability control became common. These features made cars safer and more approachable, broadening their audience. Against that backdrop, the F40's analog brutality became even more distinct, its lack of aids marking it as a product of another age. Reflection bridge. Each technological leap made the F40 seem less outdated and more timeless. Micro story. Collector evolution. As the years passed, the F40 transformed from a modern marvel to a blue-chip collectible. Auction houses began featuring it prominently, and values climbed steadily. For many, owning an F40 became less about driving it hard and more about preserving a piece of history. Some owners tucked them away with delivery miles, while others continued to exercise them on track days, reinforcing the divide between seeing it as an artifact or as a weapon. Context digest. The cultural persistence. Despite newer hypercars. Entering the stage, the McLaren F1, the Bugatti Veyron, and later the LaFerrari, the F40 never faded from relevance. Its appearance in magazines, video games, and documentaries kept it fresh in the minds of each new generation. Unlike many cars tied to their era, the F40's design aged gracefully, its aggressive wedge and towering wing remaining iconic symbols of speed. Micro story. The American fascination. In the US, the F40 became a status symbol for the wealthy and a dream car for enthusiasts. Import regulations limited access, making it even more elusive. Spotting one on American roads was akin to seeing a UFO, and car culture responded with awe. Enthusiasts debated its merits endlessly, while collectors competed to secure rare examples, cementing its mystique in the US market. Reflection bridge. The F40 had crossed from being a product of Ferrari to becoming a universal icon of car culture. Context digest. Influence on design. Supercars that came after often carried shades of the F40's philosophy. Lightweight builds, aggressive aerodynamics, and stripped interiors found their way into limited-run specials from many brands. Even modern hypercars, with all their tech, sometimes pay homage to the F40's unapologetic pursuit of speed by creating track-focused editions that channel its spirit. Micro story. The legacy of fear and respect. Unlike many collectibles that become tame with age, the F40 retained its reputation for danger. Stories of spins, crashes, and close calls reinforced the idea that it remained a car to be respected, even decades later. Owners spoke of keeping it at the edge of their abilities, never fully conquering it. That aura of danger only added to its mythology, making it seem alive in ways safer, newer cars never quite managed. Context digest. The broader legacy. Beyond Ferrari, the F40 set a precedent for how manufacturers present their halo cars. It showed that a flagship could be more than just fast, it could embody philosophy. Porsche, Lamborghini, McLaren, and even modern EV makers drew lessons from its impact, crafting cars that weren't just about numbers, but about character. Micro story, the enduring symbol. Today, the F40 is more than 3 decades old, yet it still sparks excitement wherever it appears. Whether rolling onto a concours lawn, screaming down a racetrack, or simply idling in a collection, it draws crowds like few others. Its wing, its sound, and its uncompromising design communicate instantly what it is. Not just a Ferrari, but Enzo's Ferrari. Reflection bridge. In the end, the F40 became more than a supercar. It became a cultural artifact. Its legacy continues to grow as values climb. Younger enthusiasts discover it through media, and Ferrari itself acknowledges its place in the pantheon. The story of the F40 closes not with its final production, run, but with its ongoing influence, reminding us that sometimes the boldest, purest ideas are the ones that echo the longest. The Ferrari F40 story is one of ambition, defiance, and legacy. A car born from canceled racing dreams that became the most enduring symbol of Enzo Ferrari's philosophy. It began in an era of pressure, with rivals advancing and the industry shifting toward electronics, yet Ferrari chose to respond not with comfort or compromise, but with purity and aggression. That decision created a machine that terrified some, thrilled others, and ultimately cemented itself as one of the most revered supercars ever built. Over the course of its life and long after production ended, the F40 proved that speed and numbers are only part of the story. Its value was never just in its performance, but in how it made people feel: intimidated, exhilarated, humbled, and awed. It challenged drivers to rise to its level. It challenged rivals to rethink what a supercar could be, and it challenged Ferrari itself to uphold a legacy in the absence of its founder. In doing so, it transcended being a mere model and became a permanent marker of the analog age. Even as newer Ferraris and hypercars pushed technological boundaries, the F40 remained unique because it carried the weight of a final signature. Enzo Ferrari's passing shortly after its debut turned it from a fast car into a cultural milestone, his last uncompromising gesture to the automotive world. That aura continues to shape how enthusiasts talk about Ferrari's heritage today, and why so many believe the F40 was the last Ferrari built with his spirit front and center. Today, more than 30 years later, the F40 still commands reverence. Auction prices climb, crowds gather whenever one appears, and younger generations continue to discover it in games, videos, and stories. Its influence lingers in every track-focused supercar that prioritizes connection over comfort, reminding us that true icons aren't just engineered, they're willed into existence by visionaries who refuse to bend. So as we close the book on this journey, remember the lesson the F40 leaves us. The greatest machines are not the ones that make life easier, but the ones that make us feel alive. Thanks for riding with us on Boost Bureau. See you next time, automotive enthusiasts.